morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, world. This is the Rastafari International Ambassador, Jaboni, better known as the Badass, the man from Buzzwalk, Wall. Today, I'm gonna do my thing, and that is continue telling my chronicles. I will speak about things that I have first-hand knowledge of. And that's the things that I choose to speak about, things that I know, not what I feel or what I guess over here. Now, you have some people think over here is a jukebox. So they keep calling. It is clear that they are writing my autobiography. So every so often, they will get impertinent by asking me personal and private question. Now, people emotion, people feelings, people well grease up, people well oil up. Yeah, that's all me I hear. And me I tell them, say, no, but that's not deal with that, you know. No come here say with no oil. Me no want to see, you're too shiny. Take back the fence. Don't come in here with no oil. Don't come in my yard with no oil. That me I tell you now. I have not given anybody any authorization to do such thing. So, if you want to do an autobiography on the badass, then you will have to consult public records. Now, the topic of today, let me put on my glasses, reading glasses, so I can see. The topic of today is going to be about why Black Americans hate TETHERS. Yeah. Now, the first question is, who or what is a tether? Tether is mainly our black brothers and sisters who is referred to as migrant and migrated to the US and allow themselves to be used against other Black Americans. This is a trend that have been developed throughout the Caribbean and Africa. It have divided us and have impact negatively on us over the years. Now, you know, I like to bring back certain amount of knowledge. I like to go back in the history and speak about things that people refuse now or act like they have no knowledge of. So over here, I am very thought provoking. Now, I will be asking my good brother, Professor Black Truth, to speak on the subject of tethering. So therefore, fair use of my good brother articulation of the subject.
This week, we're going to be putting some heat on Kamala Harris and on the other tethers, and I want to start by reminding you of a story that I posted on Twitter about a black man who married a Norwegian princess. Now, this guy, he described himself as a sixth-generation shaman from California, but tethers do lie. Turns out that he's actually a West Indian on his mother's side. So in reality, he's not a sixth-generation anything. He's a first-generation immigrant. Now, why would he do that? Why would he misrepresent himself so egregiously? Now, before we go any farther, I don't want to be messy here, but we have to speak some truths. Tethers have given the Africans and Caribbean folks a bad rep abroad, especially in Europe. When you see people in Britain rioting and those Scandinavians going ham about quote-unquote immigration, they're specifically talking about African migrants. You don't see them getting worked up when it comes to those Ukrainians, or even the Eastern Europeans for that matter. Black Americans didn't look at Meghan Markle's marriage to Prince What's-His-Name as being some accomplishment for us. We don't see Meghan Markle as being an avatar for foundational Black Americans. In fact, we took the opposite view with her. Rather than say what a great thing it was, we reminded her and everybody else she was in for the wake-up call from hell, and that's exactly what happened. The tethers, on the other hand, they look at people like this shaman-turned-Norwegian mail-order groom as being an avatar for themselves, as if this is some sort of accomplishment for them as a group, when in reality, the only person who's gotten anything out of it was him. Now, before we go any farther, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about how this black guy from the Caribbean somehow grafted himself onto this Norwegian royal family, and whether or not there's been a racist backlash to him being there. Well, obviously there has been. And the princess, quote-unquote, that he married, she said that she never thought that there was racism in Norway before she got married to this guy, before she started a relationship with him. So obviously this woman must have been in a coma for the last 50 years. But I find it equally interesting that this West Indian shaman, when talking about why he thought that he was having problems from the locals over there, he said, quote, "I'm not gonna lie and say like in the beginning it wasn't kind of bumpy because you're having this shaman, bisexual black man coming into your family." That's how he describes himself, as a bisexual black man. So we got the intersectional train pulled into the station, and that train is never late. And yet, even with all of the racism that this West Indian shaman has encountered in Norway, nonetheless he still says that living in Norway has, quote, unlocked a new level of bliss. That's what this guy is saying while they're talking about him like a dog, but you know, that's how these tethers are. They're just glad to be there. This is the very foundation of being a tether. You have to make that devil's bargain with yourself that you're going to eat whatever level of abuse and disrespect and indignity that these white supremacists throw at you. You gotta take it with a smile. You make up your mind that you're just gonna go ahead and grin and bear it until you get to the point that you like it. Well, if you have any respect for yourself, that's a bargain you simply can't make. See, there's been a number of racial incidents that have happened out in those Scandinavian countries. They conveniently leave out how white racist nativists attack black immigrants in those countries, but whenever some black person is accused of harming a white person over there, they make sure you know that the accused is black. Many of the white nationalists in those places accuse Somali and Ethiopians of violating white women, and they all rag on Nigerians as being scammers par excellence. And we see a similar trend in Asia and even Russia. Black people in general are not held in much high esteem abroad at all. Well, there is one exception, black Americans. If you're a black American, then you might have noticed that in those Scandinavian countries, they're more than a little standoffish until they find out you're from the U.S. Then they begin to act a little less aloof towards you, and that's not because of your nationality. When they say ugly Americans, they're not talking about black Americans, they mean entitled white tourists. Black Americans, by and large, don't have a reputation for getting into religious-based combat with these people, nor for running around trying to jump on any unprotected Caucasian they can get their hands on. The immigrants are the ones whose names are typically associated with those kind of things. In Japan, there's a large number of Nigerians, more than you might expect, and yet you don't find them having high regard for the Nigerians. When it came time to talk about the most recognizable face in Japanese commercials, it's Black Americans who top the list. Now, for someone like our friend here who's trying to improve his station in life, he finds no advantage in identifying as a West Indian, even though the Dutch had some Caribbean colonies. He found it far more advantageous for him to play up the idea that he's an American, since we don't have the baggage that certain others may have. Everyone knows our story, one of perseverance, endurance, struggle, and of being pioneers. We're trailblazers. We are the famous first. Our reputation precedes us, and by and large it's a good one because we worked hard as hell under the most trying of circumstances in human history to make it a good one. And now we have these tethers over here who claim to be part of the so-called Congressional Black Caucus, and they spend all their time advocating only for immigrants, particularly non-black immigrants, and claiming that they're our leaders. White power handpicked these puppets, funded them, filled their pockets with cash in order to artificially elevate them over us, and made sure to use their media monopoly in order to give these guys all kinds of publicity, try to give them artificial esteem. They're astroturf politicians. The leftist activists are angry that people like Ricky Torres are standing against Palestine and the war in Gaza. But Torres is an immigrant. Meanwhile, you have people like Corrine Bush who AIPAC targeted and got out of there. And sure, you can point to Ilhan Omar, but when the whole Mohammed Noor incident went down, she was MIA. And even though she held onto her seat this past congressional election, she's been far more muted in her criticism of Israel than in the past. The tethers are acting as political free agents. But nobody will be free at all as long as white power can use them as stalking horses to push anti-black agendas. One of the things that these tethers are constantly coming at us with whenever they try to confront us online is, why is it that you guys don't want to be associated with the tethers? Well, I'll tell you why. Mr. Harvey, aka Your World, is fond of saying that America was founded by thieves, slaves, and opportunists. And we know what category the tethers fall into. White supremacy is at war with us. And when you're at war, you can't have one eye on the enemy in front of you and the other eye over your shoulder looking to see if this guy back here is going to stab you in the back. It's only a matter of time. If someone's first act is to run away from home, they're not going to suddenly discover their courage when they get to the U.S. If you practice running away from a fight, then that's what you're going to do. Practice doesn't make perfect. It makes permanent. If you ran from home, I'd have to be a fool to believe you're suddenly going to take a stand here. That doesn't happen. People do whatever they can to forget about their cowardice. They'll claim to be proud of a place that they've never been to, would never visit, and if anyone told them that they had to go there, they'd fight in the streets first. All this phony jingoism. It's about saving face. Now, I want to mention, because it should be mentioned, that we have a lot of foreign-born and first-generation African and Caribbean family who understand the havoc that these tethers have wreaked, and they're not with it. They wave the flag of black empowerment, not the flag of some corrupt regime abroad. When you look at the leadership of Africa, they're also no better than tethers. They flee to France, to London, to Switzerland. They enjoy their foreign, read white harlots, their offshore and secret bank accounts. These African governments need to be giving us invitations for land and resources in Africa. Instead, they focus on giving us insults, but then again, they refuse to do anything for their own native populations. The disrespect that they show to us is nothing more than a public display of the same disrespect they show their own people each and every day. You cannot be the leader of a people and mislead them and betray them and even attack them and kill them every day without hating yourself. Your people are a living mirror image of yourself. They are you on a massive scale. You can't be so zealous about hating them without also hating yourself. These are Africa's leaders. And a lot of the people in those places have internalized this same self-loathing. This is what a tether is.
Over the years, I have been listening to the black media. That's the only thing that I listen to now, the black media. Consists of Jason Black, who do the business, and he also do the Black Authority. Then you have Professor Black Truth, who I listen to every day when he put out the broadcast. I also listen to Tyreek, my good brother. I also listen to Farah Ramesses. I also listen to Michi X. I also listen to Tone and Yvette Cornell. I also listen to a lot of other narrators like Ringo, Young Fiera, and others, depending on the topic. I listen to a wide spectrum of other black media. I am not biased and I am not partial. Now, Jason, Professor Blacktooth, and Tariq, Mishi, and Farah at times address issues that ruffled people in the Caribbean feathers. My feather don't get ruffled easily because I'm coming from when we were one. So let's take a look back on our history. I say our history, meaning the black history here in the West, mainly in the Americas. History of it that Marcus Garvey was invited to the U.S. by Booker T. Washington, and Booker T died before Marcus arrived. It's to show that Black American did embrace Marcus Garvey. I'm just following history now. Now, the history as it is made up is that the first Rastaman, so-called, Leonard Percival Howell, went to America. The record is silent as to how our good founding father, Leonard Howell, got to America. So him just turn up in America, take it that he jumped the fence. He was a fence jumper. Because there's no record of anybody in America inviting Leonard Howell. Question. Now, fast forward. The record will show that at one stage, the Black American freedom struggle was not only retained in America, but that freedom struggle was spread throughout the Caribbean. Speaking for myself, I grew up knowing about the Black American freedom struggle. Claudius Henry, the record also established that he was in America at some stage. The record is also silent as to how Claudius Henry got to America. So we take it that he was a fence jumper. I'm the same. You all have to prove me wrong because the record is silent. Now, the record also shows at some stage in the 50s, Claudius Henry's son came to Jamaica with a team of mercenaries to an attempt to take over Jamaica. I'm just going off our history as Jamaica history, Rastafari history. Now, throughout my chronicles, the record is clear that I'm from Bakawal, and I was tutor throughout my young life to fight down the establishment wherever I find them. So I am a lawbreaker. I was raised as a lawbreaker. I am a fence jumper. I jump fence internationally. Speaking for myself. I'm from a generation of fence jumper. Now, in the early days, speaking now for my generation, we were bombarded with a lot of freedom struggle, rhetoric, propaganda, movie. So Harlem was the place that were on fire, hell up in Harlem. In Jamaica, we had our version of Harlem. Now, speaking about TETHERS, in the early 60s and 50s and 70s, throughout the struggle, Black American was very vigilant in their dealing with us from the Caribbean. I remember in the 70s when Black American would come to the island and their voter's registration card and their driver's license, no passport. And if a American girl like you and a nothing for she give her brother voter's registration card, and make you try a thing. Me not talk the business, I tell you how it used to be. So I know nothing for you go through Miami, or you go through John F. K. Because in those days, the borders was being held by Black American. Yeah. One time, no foreigner couldn't get no border patrol job. Yeah, one time. One time, when you go to America and you enter the border, all you see is Black American, woman and man. Meaning brothers and sisters. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. In those days, I'm jumping the fence with a voter's registration, come up to immigration, my beautiful black sister, she would look at the ID, damn well know say I know me, but me give her a yard smile, and she give me an American smile, and wave me through. Sometimes she'll give me all a number. This is how the thing, one time, us and them. So one time, the line was whole and it all tight. Yeah. You jump the fence, and your brother say you jump the fence. Them know you come help the struggle. Yeah. Back in the 60s and the 50s and the 70s when we are going to America, we are going to help the struggle. Now, things have changed. Things have changed so hard that the whole borderline for the US is being held now by us. Yeah. When you go to enter America now, you know to see no black American, whether woman or man, I hold the line again. It's people from the Caribbean. I hold the line and I hold it tight. Them hold it tighter than black American. So now you have this serious tethering now where the slave master allow in selective few and program them to hold the line on us. And that's a go on, you know. So now, these selective few not only hold the line on us, but they turn on the brothers and sisters in the US and also holding the line on them.
They would kill their own mothers to be part of the corrupt ruling class in their home countries, but since that's never going to happen, rather than fight for freedom at home, they ran. And now they're in the US fighting to be part of the corrupt white supremacist elite here. But they can't have that either, so they try to blend in with us while at the same time claiming to be better than us. That's why I told you the story of Hush Puppy, the Nigerian email scammer who was stealing money from companies and at the same time perpetuating a fraud on the internet, claiming to be into real estate, but he didn't own any properties and couldn't tell you the first thing about real estate. He had millions of dollars, and he complained about the corrupt leaders in Africa who he fled from, but he refused to use his money to build in Africa or to do anything other than waste it on white designer brands. What a moron. Africa has hundreds of millions of people. Nigeria is the most populous place over there, and yet all these people, and they failed to even create their own version of FUBU. Same for Jamaica. They love to wear white designer brands, but it never occurred to them to build their own. Now, black Americans are also dysfunctional in this regard, but at least we have built our own clothing labels and we've put money and cachet into them so that they have brand equity. Nobody from Nigeria or the Caribbean would even think to do that. They haven't even tried to build a FUBU because they already know the African and Caribbean people would never support it. That's the problem that Marcus Garvey had. He had to flee from the Caribbean and come to the United States to find some black folks who would get with the program. And when he was inevitably deported by the white supremacists here and sent back to the Caribbean, that was the end of the revolution, because the people at home, in his home, would not support it. Hush Puppy wasted all of that money, and it never occurred to him that he should become the change that he wanted to see. But did he want to see any change? Or did he merely want to just talk about it? He instead wrote hollow and obviously lying messages claiming that poor kids in Nigeria could make it, just like he did. He even titled one of his social media posts, "Message to the Ghetto Kid." This is typical of the Tethers. They're constantly trying to act as if they've got original thoughts in their head, and yet every time they open their mouths to talk about the world, they use our verbiage, our vocabulary, our worldview. This is why the Tethers are so ridiculous when they call themselves saying that they're better than us. Without us, they wouldn't even exist. Without us, they wouldn't even be able to speak. Hush Puppy was a grand example of this dysfunction. This guy was running around, basically doing an awkward, very awkward imitation of what he saw black Americans doing, and he couldn't even get it right because he was just so strange. And he even had his little entourage with him whenever he would do his little videos, trying to imitate what he saw black American rappers doing. It was strange as hell, but it was the best that he could do, because when it comes to having a black man who's supposed to be showing himself as having opulent wealth, well, you got to have some frame of reference, and there's not one from his native country. It was amazing that he's sitting here writing messages called "Message to the Ghetto Kid." Ghetto is a term used for where black Americans are in the United States, rather the status that we've been assigned in this country. If you were talking about Nigeria, you would say slums, not ghetto. But everyone could see that this guy was just another email scammer. How could he mentor any of those children in those countries when what he was doing was a crime? The best way for any black person to protect themselves is to empower as many other black people as possible. But these Tethers never do that because they have contempt for every other black person. They've become just like the corrupt leaders of their home countries who they claim to hate so much. They hate these corrupt leaders so much, they become just like them. The reality is, this is why those countries are in the shape they're in. Because you have so many people who are perpetrating a fraud, so many people who are trying to put up a front, but it's not working. So many people trying to fake it till they make it, but they never make it, so they instead resort to trying to make it out of the country. Africa is what happens when an entire continent of people decides that home isn't worth fighting for. If black Americans were to decide that we're going to Africa in any appreciable numbers and that we were just going to take over, we could do it. But you don't see us fleeing from the United States because running just ain't in us. And by the way, what I just said to the Tethers or to the new people who are here, it may sound somewhat harsh, but it's not meant to be insulting. It's simply a statement of fact. Africa has been so demoralized at this point that anybody can, and a lot of people do, just walk right in there and just say, okay, I'm in charge. How do you have so many of these disrespectful, racist people coming in from Asia? And here they are, they're owning mines, the government's letting these guys have land for ports, they're just walking in and just saying, this is ours. And there'll be some people who try to talk tough and say, well, those Asians, they don't dare try to come in here with any weapons or anything or call themselves fighting us. You're right, they don't, because they don't have to. There are a lot of things that the African needs to do, but the main thing the African needs to do is to have a cold, clinical, honest appraisal of how he wound up in the situation that he's in. And it starts with the fact that the African wasn't willing to admit to it in the first place. Until that changes, nothing will. Brother Tariq shared a video of a Tether who was boldly bragging that she didn't come to the U.S. to build, she came to take. That sums up the ethos of the Tethers perfectly. They built nothing at home, they undermined the places they came from and collaborated with the colonizers, and when the colonizers switched from military domination to economic and political domination, the Tethers refused to fight them. They just take. Mostly they take a boat, take a plane, take any form of transportation they can away from there. Your home is an externalization of yourself, and when you run from home, what you're saying is you're running from yourself. But of course that's impossible. You can run to the other side of the planet, to the other side of the galaxy if you want, which Tethers would do if they could. You can take up a phony name to sound like a black American, which Tethers do. You can talk like a black American, dress like a black American, but you still can't run from yourself. Everyone wants to feel that they are inherently valuable, but that requires you to create value. You need to be able to point to yourself, to your surroundings, to your history, and say, "This I have done." Well, you can't do that when the only thing you've done is flee. Tethers are jealous as hell of foundational black Americans, and they should be. When people around the world talk about black excellence, about black accomplishments, they talk about us. When you fight someone, you show them who and what you are. This is why the white supremacists have a love-hate relationship with the people that they've had to go to war with. It's paradoxical, but it also makes a weird kind of sense. You see, the history of the European is a history of war. So when they tell the stories of other groups that they've tried to colonize or enslave, they inevitably separate them into two categories: the ones who fought them and the ones who bowed down to them. When the European colonizers went into Africa, let's stop telling tales. Only a small handful of Africans actually fought the Europeans, and the ones who fought the hardest were in South Africa. That's why the term Zulu has made it into English parlance. Those British white supremacists didn't like the Zulus, but by waging war on the British, they forced the bastards to respect them. And the same goes for the Japanese and some of the Arabs. Now, to be sure, when I say respect, I don't mean in the sense of affection. I mean it in the sense of when you have athletes who play contact sports. You teach the guy on the other side of the line how to respect you. And what that means is you show him you'll knock him over. Even if they win the game against you, they're still going to respect you in that they have to think before they run up on you. Problem for Africa is it's been a long time since the African has given the white supremacists anything to think about. They've rolled over so many times now that there's no resistance left. 30 years after apartheid, and South Africa's no better off than it was before Mandela was let out of prison, and you don't need to know what my estimation of him is. And the saying goes...
So, without further ado, I'm going to have Professor Blacktooth come break that down. Now, how are we going to fix that? How are we going to fix that? So this is what the debate should be now, because a lot of us now is thinking that this generation is thinking now that Black American, i.e. Yankee, not like us. When that's far from the truth. It's us, not like us. It's us, a fight us. Now, I'm trying to stay away from an unfamiliar topic, and that is cartel. But cartel is one of the biggest and the head of the tethering right now. But me nah go dwell. Me just make you know say a tethering culture cartel a push. I mean, people have it to say every man free to do what they want to do, which is right. But you also should hold a line in terms of the struggle, because the struggle don't stop because you think you become successful. Because there's a trend going on right now. And I am sure at some stage the powers that be will turn on cartel again. You see how them turn pan Diddy? Them turn pan R. Kelly the other day. I use a bad man as a jingle. And recently I get notification from YouTube that that video is blocked because of copyright. Talking about copyright, gone are the days when you could have played a song and it would be okay for you to play that song. Today, not even the artist himself can play his song on YouTube. I mean, just look what we have done to ourselves. We Jamaicans supposed to be independent and free more than everybody else. We supposed to lead the free in the dumb. Yeah. Today, everything for us have been copyrighted by them. How comes me can't play a record again to express myself? How come every record that ever make a Jamaica is now copyrighted by Apple, Amazon, Spotify, YouTube? How come me can't get no right to play our music again? I don't want to go off topic still, but I just want you to let you all see how we have been all back in prison. And slavery now not gone away. We are all back on the slave plantation, and we are all now being told what to do and what not to do. So, any comment or any correction, please put that in the comment. The floor is now open for debate.
And the same goes for the rest of the continent 70 years after so-called independence, and those countries are no better off than they were beforehand. Yet you have individuals who try to show disrespect to us and claim that they're proud of places that they've fled from, or in many cases that they've never been. What parent abandons a child and then claims to be proud of that child? What person is proud of their mother or motherland and yet flees from it, turns their back on their mother, does nothing for their mother, and would fight you in the streets if you ever tried to make them go back to their mother? Honor is something that cannot be given. Neither can reputation or esteem. You can only get those things through what you do. Making yourself useful to white power doesn't give you honor, because the white supremacists have no honor to give. You can't build a reputation by being a bootlick, other than to be known for licking boots. And as for esteem, look at how the tethers gnash their snaggled teeth at us and hate us constantly. Because when people talk about black, they talk about us. There is no esteem or any sort of value that accrues to being a tether. The whole world knows our heroes. From Nat Turner to Malcolm X to King to Huey Newton, you name it. The tether's constant attacks against us comes from a place of insecurity. And the reason why is, when somebody has to run, especially if they ran from a fight, there's a sense of shame that goes along with it, because it's an admission of failure. And that being the case, when you have individuals who see themselves as weak, and they're among people who actually fought, that makes them feel insecure. They're looking and going, well, I know when you look at me, you probably see a coward or you see somebody who's a failure, and I'm going to overcompensate for that by saying, no, you're the failure. And the tethers always try to play that game. That is, until these white supremacists who they try to mob themselves up with put their foots up their behinds. Then all of a sudden racism suddenly exists again, and they're trying to find some sort of pan-African, all-encompassing black solidarity that they were the ones who destroyed. There's an uncomfortable conversation that has to do with immigration in general, and the white media, including YouTube, wouldn't like it if you actually spoke about it. But the truth of the matter happens to be that if individuals feel that they have to immigrate, there's nothing necessarily disgraceful about it. But if somebody goes to somebody else's land and they decide to insult them, especially if that person opened the door for you to get in, there is nothing that is not disgraceful about that. You see, when it comes to the tethers, we have more power when it comes to them than we actually want to admit to. Because without us, the tethers wouldn't exist. Not only would they not have had the opportunity to come to the United States, they wouldn't have a place that was even safe to come to because they failed when they have 99% of the population to make their own home countries safe for themselves. We, as a minority, we came over here and bossed up on the enemy. And that's one of the things that eats the tethers alive. They look at themselves and they see individuals who fled from a fight and they're around us and they see the warrior class, and that just makes them insecure. Now, rather than get some guts and some integrity, they decided instead that they would hide behind the coattails of white supremacy and try to sling mud at us. That being the case, understand something. Without us, the tethers do not exist. Not merely because they wouldn't be able to get into the country, but also because without us, white supremacy would have no use for the tethers at all. The tethers are meant to be an inherent buffer group that gives the white supremacists some people with the requisite amount of melanin who call themselves trashing us and talking noise about us. We have the ability to pull the plug on the tethers. We have the ability, if we focus ourselves, on making it where white supremacy has absolutely no use for them whatsoever. White supremacy does not like them. White supremacy has and has never had any long-term plans for the tethers. Their admission to the United States was nothing more than a short-term tactical ploy, and when the time comes, white supremacy will pull the plug on them, but if we decide that we're going to delineate ourselves from them, it's going to happen sooner than that. Without us, what would the tether be? The little crumbs that they've gotten is entirely because white power thinks they can be useful as political mouthpieces against us, but by delineating ourselves, we're taking away their usefulness. Now, for the immigrant family who listened to me, the ones who came to build and not to take, yes, we're speaking strongly on this issue because we've long since reached a point where tiptoeing around the subject and trying not to step on anybody's toes simply isn't an option. Now, some may feel some kind of way when you hear us talking about these tethers, but I got some advice for you. I'm talking about our immigrant family, the ones who are on code. You need to take a page from our book and delineate yourselves from these tethers. You should be the main ones banging the drum harder than anyone. We shouldn't have to be kicking these tethers in the teeth over here because you should have been doing it at home, or at the very least, doing it over here. The reason the tethers continue to be a problem is because they know they can undermine African unity in Africa and support white supremacy in the U.S., and that many of their own brethren from the motherland won't say boo about it. So to the family from abroad, be it from Africa or the Caribbean, you need to start calling out these tethers. Distinguish yourselves from them. Make it clear where you stand. And to answer a question that I get regularly, how can those who just so happen to be immigrants or immigrant descendants show that they're on code? Start by lending your voice to ours. When you have people like Coleman Cruz and Candace Owens and others saying that they're against reparations, you need to be leading the charge to tell them that you may not be an FBA, but you're supporting reparations because it's owed. And everyone who's in the U.S. owes a debt to the FBA community because we and we alone put in the work to force this country's laws, policy, and culture to be something resembling a civilized country. We and we alone made it possible for all the others like yourselves to be here and to have rights and programs when you get here. And without us, those things would not exist. And by the way, I phrase it that way for a reason. If you're not giving credit to the FBA community for what you have, then what you're saying is the white supremacists are responsible for you being here and whatever opportunities you have. You're crediting white supremacy with that. That's what tethers do. Tethers push the lie that white society is so benevolent and so gracious, and that why the tether owes them everything. And that's why they prop up white supremacy. Well, take a look what Donald Trump is doing, going in on the Haitians. As I've always said, when white supremacy is done with its tools, it breaks its tools. And truth be told, too many Haitians, not all, but dang sure enough, have been on that whole kick about we think we're doing better than black Americans are. You take a look at Florida. You take a look at the places where you got the Haitian enclaves. Those places are hardly bastions of prosperity and progress. They resemble Port-au-Prince a lot closer than they do Portland. Letting a few black immigrants have some government loans and a few university and corporate jobs was always nothing more than a short-term sham by white supremacy. White power never had any long-term plans for these tethers. But then again, the Tethers already know that, even if it's only on a level that they dare not admit to. That's how they can boldly tell us, I'm not here to build, I'm here to take. See, they didn't build a business. What they did was they took government money and the government built it for them. Tethers try to make it a point to cosplay as people that they're not, trying to get by on other people's hard work and swing on the coattails of other people's achievements and reputation. Well, for us, it is way past time that we began severing the ties that divide. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Deborah Thomas,